Are you learning an instrument and you're just not sure if you're practicing correctly, or you'd like some pointers on how to practice better? Or are you a parent of a child who is taking lessons on an instrument and you just want to make sure that they're using their time wisely when they're practicing for their lessons? Well, I have some pointers for you, so stick around. I'm Karen Rock, and I've been teaching piano lessons for over 30 years. So I have some tips that I'd like to share with you on how to make your practicing a little bit more productive. My instrument is the piano, so I'm going to use that as my example, but any of these tips can be used for any instrument at all. The first overall tip that I would give you is to treat your practicing like you would treat working out to get more healthy or studying a new subject in school to learn a new thing. So if you're working out, you want to make sure that you work out frequently and that you don't overdo it on any one particular day, and that you focus on different things each time you work out throughout the week. Also, if you're studying for something in school, you don't want to cram for the test right before the test happens. And then what happens then? As soon as the test is over, you forget everything that you just crammed for. So practicing is the same way. You want to make sure you're practicing regularly. You want to make sure that you practice differently each time and that you're focusing on different things each time. And also, you don't want to cram right before your lesson. So if you're taking lessons on your instrument, you don't want to just practice right before the lesson and then not practice the rest of the week, because you won't retain any of that information or any of that muscle memory in your hands. So the other thing that's similar with practicing an instrument and working out to stay healthy is that you need to warm your body up when you're working out, and then you also need to warm up your hands or your vocal cords if you're a singer when you're practicing your instrument. So starting each practice session with some warm-ups is a great idea, especially in the winter months when you might be a little colder. Like literally you're warming up your fingers so that they can play those pieces that you need to practice. What kinds of warm-ups should you do? Well, usually scales are a good idea. Any kind of exercises from an exercise book where you're working on technique or something like that. Ask your teacher if you're taking lessons, and if you're not taking lessons, then get yourself a good warm-up book with some scales and maybe some exercises that you can do at the beginning of your practice session. Once you've warmed up and you're in the meat and potatoes part of your practice session and you're reviewing the pieces that you want to get better at, there are a few key things that you can do to help make your practice session more productive. The first is whole part whole. That's a concept where you're going to play the entire piece and then you're going to isolate some section of that piece that you want to work on more, and then maybe finish by playing the whole piece one more time. So get the idea, review the whole piece, and then as you're going through the piece, you're probably going to think, oh, that one part, I need to go back to that. And that leads me into the second thing, which is isolate certain sections of your piece. Don't just keep playing the whole piece all the way through, because that doesn't really do anything. I know I've heard a lot of parents say things like, but my child, he just keeps playing this one part over and over again, and I just want to hear him play the whole song. Well, if he's just playing one part over and over again, that may be a good thing, because what you want to do is isolate those parts that are giving you a hard time. So it's not really great for the people who are listening to someone practice, but it really helps the the person who is practicing. So my teacher, when I was in college, taught me a little trick about isolating that I'll share with you now. So you use a metronome. So you may have an app like on your phone, or you may have an actual battery operated metronome like I have. What you would do is isolate that one section, and it might be as small as one measure of music, and put your metronome down to a very slow tempo, much slower than you normally would have to play that measure, and play a game. So you're going to play that one little section 3 times. If you can play it 3 times perfectly in a row, then take that metronome and move it up 1 notch, and then play it again. And if you can get it 3 times in a row at that speed, then move it up another notch and just keep going until you get back to the original tempo that you need to be at. Then, if you can play that one measure at that original tempo, then go and include the measures around that one measure and maybe play 8 measures worth that maybe starts right before that measure and ends a little bit after that measure. And then you can get even bigger. So again, that goes right back to the whole concept. So you're going to start with the whole thing, isolate that one little part that you need to work on, and then just bring that back to the whole one more time. So another tip that you can use is don't forget your pencil. Make sure you have a pencil with you ready to go to mark things in your music. And there's lots of different things that you can mark. You can put in a letter name of a note that's really high up on a ledger line or really down low on a ledger line, a note that you're not used to playing. You can put in counting. Putting in counting is always a good idea. Write the counting in underneath. Or other things in piano, since you have the bass clef and the treble clef, and sometimes you'll have different rhythms in both clefs. Sometimes I like to tell my students to draw a line from the note in the treble clef down to the note in the bass clef, like which notes are lining up. And that's really, really helpful, especially if you're doing that on the beat, okay? And so if you take lessons, your teacher can help you with that. Because that's a little bit more advanced. But definitely use your pencil to circle notes that sometimes you have trouble with, to write in counting, to write in letter names, because if you write it in, it's always going to be there to remind you. But if you don't write it in, then you might make the same mistake over and over again. Another thing you can write in is fingerings. It's a great idea to write in fingerings because that really helps you to get muscle memory. And if you're playing a piece with the same fingering every single time, you're going to increase your ability to have that muscle memory. So the last thing that I'm going to tell you to make your practice session really productive and rewarding is to reward yourself. So you've done your warm-up. You've gone over the meat and potatoes part of what you need to do. The end of your practice session should be you playing a piece that you play really well, a piece that you really enjoy, and it could be more than one piece. So, save the best for last kind of thing. Reward yourself by just playing something that you feel great about when you play, because that's a confidence booster for you. And it's also just a nice way. It's like the dessert at the end of the meal. It's like, now I get to do the fun thing because I worked on the stuff I really need to work on. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about today is how long should you practice when you sit down for a practicing session? So the answer to that is going to vary greatly depending upon the age of the student practicing, the ability level, meaning are they beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and also the commitment level. And so again, it's also going to vary depending upon if the student is a child and you're the parent trying to make sure that they practice the right amount of time, and whether you're an adult and this is something that you're doing on your own. So I'll start by talking about children practicing. So if a child is younger elementary level and they're just starting out, for the first few months, it's okay to just practice 10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes a day, 5 to 6 days a week works okay. Definitely take one day off and then possibly 2 days off if you need it, but make sure that those 2 days are non-consecutive days, and make sure that your child is practicing the day after their lesson or even the same day as their lesson later on in that day so that they can retain that information that the teacher has shown them. Okay, that's super, super important. And then eventually, when a child has learned a little bit more and has advanced in their lessons, you're going to increase the time to 15, 20, and then eventually they'll work their way up to 30 minutes per day. So that's probably more later elementary for most kids, depending again on your commitment level and what else you have going on in your life. Okay, for adults, same thing. I would say a minimum of 30 minutes a day if you want to keep this up as something that you do as, something fun on the side. And again, it depends upon what you have going on in your life and what your commitment level is. But think of it as working out. So if you're trying to stay in shape and you want to be healthy, you want to make sure that you work out on a regular basis and that you put some time in. So the same thing goes with an instrument. You want to make sure you put that time in on a regular basis and don't just cram it all, like I'm just going to practice once a week and I'm going to practice for 2 hours. That does not work. It doesn't stay for the long run. So do it regularly and do it for, 30 minutes a day is a great amount of time. If you're more serious and you have higher level goals, then obviously that time can increase exponentially depending upon what the goals are. So the important thing is keep practicing, do it regularly, and have fun. So that's all I have for you today. I'm Karen Rock, coming to you from the Karen Rock Music Studio, and stay practicing, and I'll see you again soon at the piano.